Yeah, we belong to Jesus Christ.
So I've got some influential people in my life. Every once in a while I'll have an opportunity to say thank you to those, and there's some that have gone before me and passed on that I don't necessarily get an opportunity anymore to thank them. But you know, this is not plagiarism. I don't believe that it's plagiarism, because I think that we all have this entity within inside of us to mimic the example that is set before us. So this is not me also just saying, I'm not going to own up to anything than which that I do, okay? That's not me doing this. But the way that I preach and how that I communicate, right or wrong, comes from a lot of different people in which that I mimic, okay? So every once in a while, if I space off in the middle of a sermon, more than likely, it's because that I would sit there and think, man, that sounded a lot like Wesley Miller. Or every once in a while, I'll say, believe it or not, that sounded a lot like James Dean Davis Jr. How in the world did he influence me that much? Every once in a while, I'll start thinking, man, that sounds like a lot like my youth pastor, Chris Beard. Or every once in a while, I'll say, you know what? This is what somebody has done that was really good, and I've caught up on that, and I was just like, you know, I would want to institute that in my own practice in my life. And so here's the thing. I don't think that there's a lot of things in which that I do behind the pulpit that is original. I feel like that I've hijacked it or stole it from somebody else. And so that's not for me just to say, you know, I am stealing somebody else's sermon, but certain people's practices. Every once in a while, like this morning, whenever I'm getting on to my kid, justifiably getting on to my kid, I'll walk away from that moment and I'll say, my goodness, that sounded a lot like my mother. I don't know if you've ever done that before or not, but there's certain people that you would just say, you know, that particular person, that influences me. I've been influenced, okay? I follow certain people's examples, right or wrong. I take particular cues from other people, and you do as well. Admit it, you do as well. Some of you would say, that sounds like, I sound like my father, or I sound like my best friend, or a lot of the thoughts that I might have come from those other people influences. It's funny today, as Tiffany is teaching Sunday school this morning, she comes up with a quote on her PowerPoint as she's teaching, and it sounds really good, and I'm just like, amen, amen. And she's like, thank you, I got that from John Wesley's book, you know, and I'm just like, no wonder I like that so much. But we're in a season of practices. We're calling this 40 days of practices. And what I've tried to hone in on is different things in which that we might not necessarily be familiar with, that we could also call them practices. That these are things in which that you do intentionally. And it's not something that was just automatically given to you. I like to say this, and I don't know where I got it from, but I like to say that God has packed your bag. God has given you certain gifts in your particular context. He's given you gifts in which that you are highly effective at, okay? And I'm not talking about those things in which that you naturally operate. Some of you are great at hospitality. Some of you are great encouragers. Some of you are great givers. Some of you guys are great teachers. And those are great things. That's how God packed our bags. But those are not practices per se. And some of the things that we've been talking about, like denying, like adjusting, like believing. Last week we've talked about those things, and we get to thinking about those things, and we say, how can we practice those things? Because really, truthfully and honestly, we are the ones that do those things. We do the denying. We do the believing. We do the adjusting. We do the praying. Those are things in which that we do. So today, we're talking about the practice, are you ready? The practice of following. Did you guys get that from any of the songs that we sang today? Every one of the songs, it was easy. It was very easy for me to find songs that dealt with following. You want to know what topic that it was very difficult to have the word in to find all 4 songs that dealt with it? Nobody likes to sing about denying, okay? I had a hard time finding songs about denying. You know, Phil, that might be a song that maybe you need to kind of capitalize. I mean, the market's wide open for that one, okay? And so if you would turn to John chapter 12. John chapter 12, I'm going to start with verse 20, okay? Now our sound men and women have been really, really great. Justin, Emma up the ante last week. She was in charge of the slides, and so now we're going to see. Thank you. You're there. But no, go back to the next slide. I'm sorry, this is my fault. This comes from the James chapter 4 passage. All these practices, draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. This is the practice in which that we've been talking about. You'll have one next week is Palm Sunday, and we'll have one more practice in which that we're going to be talking about. But this comes from this premise of drawing near to God. Okay, so following, very practical how to draw near to God to follow Him, right? The end. Let's go, right? Okay, so John chapter 12, starting with verse 20. It says this, "Now among those who went up to worship in the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him," just kind of a side note here, why they came up to Philip is because that they were Greek, and Philip is a Greek name. And so I thought that was kind of neat, finding that out. And said to him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew, and then Andrew to Philip, and they're whispering, "Hey, there's somebody here to see Jesus." "Oh, okay, I'll tell him." "Hey, there's somebody here to see Jesus." "Okay, I'll tell him." "Oh, I'm here to see Jesus." And this is kind of what is going down, just kind of going down the chain of command here. Philip went and told Andrew, and then Andrew to Philip, and he went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, and it remains just a single grain, but if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life." There's a reason why verse 26 is in bold print here, because this is where I want you to hold in on, okay? "Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor. Now my soul is troubled. And what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it's for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven. "I've glorified it, and I will glorify it again." I like that. He says, "I've done it once, and I will do it again." Praise be to God. And the crowd standing there heard it, and said, it was thunder. Others said, "An angel has spoken to him." And Jesus answered them and said, "Hold on, calm down. This voice has come for your sake, not for mine, because I've already known it. I know this is what's happening. Now this is the judgment of the world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." And he said this to indicate the kind of death that he's going to deny. So I want you, if you don't mind, just go to this next slide, and I'm just kind of staying out of the way, and I would like for you guys just to read this out loud, kind of corporately. We don't really do this often, so I think this is a great little practice. And we're going to read this together. Are you ready? "Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also." Would you pray silently as I pray for the service and for this message? God, thank you so much for your word. I pray again as I stand upon the authority of the truth of your word today, God. I pray that it's relevant to us, and I pray it changes us. Don't leave any tile unturned in our life. Reach even the farthest, the darkest places, God. And we would be careful to pay attention as we have ears to hear. In Christ's name, amen. So if you're interested at all in Hebrew, to follow means the word behind or come after. It's to walk behind or come after somebody. Anybody baffled by my Hebrew scholarship of to follow? Let me just give you another one. Dictionary.com says something very similar, okay? This is very scholarly. You're going to go look up dictionary.com. It says a definition for a person who imitates, copies, or take on as a model. So it's to come after. So it's to come behind, or to mimic, or to imitate, or copy, or come behind the same direction. Okay? You cannot follow somebody and go a different direction. Okay? That's kind of the premise. So Jesus talked about this in verse 23. 23. Whoever serves must follow me. If anyone is going to come after me, if anybody is going to be called my disciple, if anybody's going to choose this is what he is saying. He's saying, here's what's cool about what Jesus is doing. He's not doing a bait and switch. Okay, I think that maybe, to be honest with you, I think that maybe I do some injustices behind the pulpit by baiting and switching, and maybe, just maybe, you ready for this? Maybe that we've lost our prophetic voice behind the pulpit because we do too much of this. That maybe, just maybe, that we do not tell it like Jesus tells it. Or maybe even how John tells it, how Jesus tells it, as black and white, because it's very helpful for us. But Jesus doesn't do the bait and switch thing in which that we are kind of, he doesn't say kind of this one thing like, I want you to kind of get involved. Okay? I want you to just kind of come in, and I want you to kind of test the waters, okay, a little bit. And let me see how that you respond, okay? Just kind of, dip your toe in it and just see how it feels like. And then maybe, just maybe, whenever you dip your toe in it, maybe the water is warm enough that you would say, oh, okay, I'm going to dive in. Jesus doesn't talk about it like that. He's like, you got to dive in. You want to be my disciple? Well, it's almost like kind of tongue-in-cheek here whenever he's saying it. You want to be a disciple? Do you know what disciple means? To follow. It's not like, oh, I'll catch up with you later. I'm going to go do this one thing over here, and then I'll come back. He says, that's not a disciple. He is defining what discipling actually is. To be his disciple is to actually follow him. It's not about praying a prayer. It's not about the fire insurance, right? Like, I'm going to come down here and pray just to kind of save myself from hell. Okay, that's not what he's talking about. It's not fire insurance. Verse 26 says, whoever serves me must follow me. I wish that I could emphasize the way that maybe Jesus does. He does. Listen to the word that I'm going to emphasize here, okay? Whoever serves me must follow me. It's not an option. I used to love this game as a kid. I'm picturing my mind, 4th grade, Mrs. Morris as my teacher. And we used to play follow the leader, okay? Going out to recess, we would line up in this big long hallway at Tologa Public Schools. And to pass the time, as somebody is going to use the restroom or getting a drink, he says, okay, let's play follow the leader. You want to know when I loved playing that game? When I was the leader. When I was the leader, I would do some acrobatic types of things, and because if I would do it, the game is if they can't do it, if the people following you cannot do it, they're out, right? You want to know when I hated the game the most? When I had to follow. I didn't like it because the stakes were higher. I had to do what they did, and sometimes people were more athletic than me, and I won't even show you what are some of the moves that I would do because I remember them, okay? They're very manly, by the way. Anyway, you want to know another thing in which that it was just, so the sermon is in my heart all week long, and I'm coming back from Dusty and Tiffany. Alan and Lincoln had a birthday party in Tologa yesterday, and so I'm driving down the road, and I'm going down these back roads, and lo and behold, in these back roads, I look in my rearview mirror, and you want to know who's following me? a police officer. Okay? And there's really no other place to go. So I know I'm looking at kind of the time frame in which that a police officer, there's no passing lanes, and a police officer is going to abide by the law. And so we're talking like 30 miles that I'm going to be followed by a police officer, okay? Let me tell you something. I'm more aware, there's never a time that I'm more aware of the speed limit than there is at that particular time, amen? Right? And so whenever somebody is on my tail that can do something about breaking the law, that's whenever I can be more aware of this right now, right? And so I'm all clammy, and so my 3 kids are in the back and say, hey, Daddy, why don't you put on that song that you always play on the phone? I can't right now. I can't look at my phone. Well, why not? You always do it. Because Daddy's going to get sent to jail. You know, I mean, I'm just more aware of not breaking the law at that point in time, right? I think that's very interesting. You know, I can tell you if I'm following the police officer, I know at what speed that I need to be going. I don't need to look down and test myself. I just follow him. You know, and I'm not going to get in trouble, right? If I just follow the law-abiding person, right? So I think that's just very interesting. I want to remind you of what Jesus said the second week of this series, okay? The second week of this series, it's about denying yourself. Mark 8:34. I think that we've got it, maybe. Mark 8. Yeah, here it is. He says, he called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, if any want to become my followers. Other versions, I think this is interesting. Other versions translate it as this: if anyone wants to be my disciple, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. If you want to be a follower or a disciple, anybody wants to be my follower, you must take up your cross and follow me. Sometimes we want to follow Jesus as long as it's convenient. As long as we're acceptable to the terms of agreement. You know, like, I'm not going to read the fine print. I'm not going to see what Jesus requires of me. I'm not going to look at the fine print. I'm just going to say, I'm going to skip down to the end where I can sign my name, or for that matter, where Jesus signs my name for me. And I say, sign me up, Jesus, okay? And I'm just going to say, I'm a follower. I've got the cross around my neck. You know, I've done the prayer. I've done the fire insurance. But as far as reading the terms of agreement, I'm not interested in that. I am not interested in that. I believe I was reading a devotion a couple of weeks ago, and I knew that I would have this following sermon. And so I wrote it down. And this is what it says: becoming a Christian means believing that Jesus is trustworthy. I have to repeat this, okay? So follow along. Becoming a Christian means believing that Jesus is trustworthy and surrendering our life to His. Christian is a person who believes in Jesus enough to follow Him. It's not just simply, okay, we're upping the ante. Last week it was about believing. Is it simply believing? Well, this is just kind of connecting belief with an action. If you believe, there has to be a following action. So I want you to know exactly what following is. And I think we get this kind of confused. I know some of you like this following, where John chapter 10 verse 27 says, my sheep listen to my voice. They know me and they follow me. You like that? I mean, Jesus kind of calls the people that are following Him to be sheep, to recognize the voice in which that they is calling. It's not an abstain. It's not like that they're saying, hey, I'm going to stay in the way that I was. I'm just going to add, I've got this life in which that I live. With this life that I live, I'm just going to add a little bit of Jesus to it. And it might not change or affect anything in my life, but I can tell you what, at least I've got Jesus. And let me tell you something. I believe that God is everywhere. Jesus is everywhere. He is omnipresent. He is in your mess. Even though that today, whenever we say, oh, this following thing is so hard for me to wrap my mind around. Because I look at my life and I can tell that there is not a lot of following action going on. It seems as if Jesus was going this way, my life would reflect every other direction but that. And so it's hard for us to wrap our minds around that. But being a devoted follower of Jesus means that we're called to tag along with Jesus. We're meant to follow Him rather than expecting Jesus to tag along with us. And like I was saying, I believe that He's even in your mess, that I believe that Jesus is there. And this is what it's not. Now listen to me, hear me. I hope this is a prophetic type of word today. This is not a masking. Following Jesus is not masking ill behaviors, but it's also a call not to glorify sinful behaviors. Although that Jesus is with us in the sinful behaviors, that He is everywhere, following Jesus, although that this might be true, we're called to lift Jesus up and not to magnify the mess in which that we're in. By magnifying Jesus, we're saying, He is lifting me up out of the pit. If He calls me away from it, He is going to give me everything I need to not just pick myself up, but Jesus is the one that is picking myself up. He's the one that is molding the pieces together that are broken and shattered, and He is making a beautiful masterpiece out of what I have messed up. This is not me saying, I'm a sinner. Unapologetically, I'm a sinner. I think we sometimes get this backwards. We can say, I'm unapologetically a sinner. We need to get to a place in which we say, I am unapologetically following Jesus. No matter what my mess is, I'm not going to glorify my mess. I'm going to keep on following Jesus, because following Jesus is going to magnify Him, and this is what our purpose is. To be a Christian. I hate it that I have to define what that is today. Christians are small Jesuses. Christians are following Jesus. Christians are not, I'm just going to add a little bit of Jesus here. And every once in a while, I'll take the little bobblehead Jesus off the shelf and I'll say, look what I got. And then I can put him back on the shelf later. Now, I do believe the psalmist says this. He says, where can I go from your Spirit? And again, that just magnifies saying that God is everywhere. God is everywhere, and I believe that He's going to go where our mess is. I want to lead you back to this a couple of weeks ago. Remember whenever we were talking about Mark chapter 8, and it said it so beautifully. If you're going to follow me, you've got to let me lead. You got to let me lead. If you're going to follow me, if you're going to be a disciple, you got to find where your place is, okay? And so thank you so much for the Facebook messages. I'm not going to throw somebody under the bus who actually did this, but there were some messages in which that I got that said, well, here's the thought behind God as my co-pilot. You guys remember me talking about that? And so that they were justifying, and I'm sorry if I offended anybody, and I told you to direct those emails to Jimmy whenever I was gone, but you went ahead and you messaged me anyway. But I'm just going to unapologetically say, we got to let Jesus drive. He cannot be our co-pilot, which we automatically say, oh, well, here's a resource for me. Jesus has been silent here, sitting in the passenger seat for whenever I need Him. I got this the rest of the time. We got to let Jesus drive. So remember, I was telling you a few people have influenced me. I don't know if you guys have ever heard me say, I want to follow so closely to Jesus that I've got Jesus's dust from His sandals in my teeth. I don't know, you guys ever remember me saying that? Some of you guys are so good. You listen to everything, right? So I begin to wonder where I got that idea from because nothing original comes from me. So I began research. I said, this cannot be a Cason original. I am not that smart, okay? I'm not that creative, okay? And so it comes from, I believe, it came from this guy called Ray Vander Laan. He did this great study about the visit to the Holy Land, and he was talking about in the Mishnah, he talked about this Jewish blessing that went something like this. This is the Jewish blessing, okay? You ready for, I'm going to bless you with a Jewish blessing. It says this. Where'd it go? May you be covered in the dust of the rabbi. That was a simple Jewish blessing. May you be covered in the dust of the rabbi. And this is where the thought comes from, is that you followed somebody so closely as a apprentice to the rabbi that whenever you did in the dusty roads, you couldn't help but to have dust on your tunic. I like the dust in your teeth better, so just kind of grin and grit it with me, okay? This is talking about what attitudes of Jesus becomes to come upon me. Whatever ways in which Jesus is going. Remember the song, where you go, I'll go. Where you lead, I'll follow. That's not the lyrics of the song, but you get the gist. I'm so attuned to having those words right there in front of me. If you've been to any restaurants, have you guys ever went to a restaurant in which that there was a trainee waitress, or waiter that is right there beside them as the one person that is supposedly the expert is teaching them how to take orders, and they're just following them closely, and what they're trying to do is that they're trying to figure out how to get the best types of tips, right? And so here's what I think that this following passage is saying. This is not an opinion. This is what I believe, okay? Watch for where God is working and join Him. I need some of you to open your eyes for a little bit because you're going to have to watch where He's going, okay? Watch for where Jesus, God, is working and join Him. For where God is moving, there's a difference between God, this is what I'm going to do, what I want you to bless. I think that this is how we operate. We operate in this and say, I'm going to make these life-altering decisions in my life, and I'm going to pray blessings upon those life-altering decisions. Right? We say, I'm going to go this way, I'm going to do this. I hope God's going to bless this. I hope God's going to be involved in this. We have a mode of operation that way, the thinking that Jesus, God is inclined to our agenda. We have a tendency in our westernized culture to have the inclination to think whatever we're involved in, talk about narcissism, whatever we're involved in, God is blessing. Do you think that we would ever get to a point in which that God would be saying no to us? Maybe I don't want you to have that job. Maybe I want you to do something else. Maybe, just maybe, there are some adjustments that have to be made in our lives. Maybe that we would do an inventory of saying, maybe, just maybe, I'm not in the will of God. Are we willing to ask God if we are? Because have we considered the cost? Have we considered? My question is, are we truly following Jesus? Are we facing away, doing our own thing? Imagine what it would be like for the rabbi to come up to Andrew and Peter, two brothers that probably were decent at fishing. Imagine them, Jesus coming up to them. Imagine how the story would go and say, follow me. And Peter and Andrew would do this. Nah. I kind of like smelling like fish. I mean, I kind of got my own thing going. I think somebody wrote a song like that. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. I hate that song. It goes against everything in which that the Scripture is talking about. Ain't nobody going to tell me what it's all about. Well, what about Jesus? Can Jesus tell it what it's all about? Is he capable of telling you, come follow me? You're going to have to drop your nets down, and you're going to have to do something in order to follow me. You can't be just like, Jesus, I want you in my life. Well, maybe, just maybe, I'll just add some Jesus in my life. Of all the mess and all the maybe if I just add Jesus in my life, maybe it'll make me feel better. Here's what I think is the problem with that. Is that I think that we fabricate. We artificially convince ourselves that we are actually following Jesus, and we're actually chasing our own desire. We're actually chasing after things in which that is our own agenda. We're actually chasing after what we want, and we're asking Jesus to say, follow me. Although that Jesus is going to be with you, but that's the same thing in which that he told Peter. He said, you know what? Get behind me, Satan. Get in line. Know your place. So there's a lot of preaching points here, and I promise you I'm gonna speed this along here. We don't know a lot about Philip, but guess who the Greeks went to? They went to Philip because he was a Greek. In John chapter 12, verse 20, they went to him. They had a guy who was a Greek who was associated with Jesus, so the Greeks went to Philip. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if somebody could come to you and say, I know somebody who's associated with Jesus. I know somebody who follows Jesus, and if I needed to know who Jesus was or what he has said about that, I can tell you, I know somebody that knows that. Wouldn't it be nice that somebody could say something about that, about you? So just very quickly, wouldn't it be awesome if people saw something in you that they say, hey, I think they kind of know Jesus. Where did Jesus go? What did Jesus do? He laid down his life not to come to serve, not to come to be served, but to serve. To give his life for the ransom for many. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. So here's what I want to challenge to you. So obviously this morning I was still working through this, and God's dealing with me. So let you know that this is some of the things in which that I'm dealing with as well. So if I'm stepping on your toes, I'm in the boat with you. I'm not trying to magnify disobedience or anything like that. It's just that there's some adjustments that I think that I need to make to follow Jesus, okay? So as I'm thinking about this morning, I think this is important. The 1 Corinthians passage, Justin, it says this. This came to my mind this morning. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And this is Paul talking to other people in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. And he's saying this. He's saying, you might not know which way to go, but I tell you what, if you follow me, I'm not saying that I'm the leader, but I can tell you which direction that I'm going. I'm going to be following Jesus, and so if you're following me, you're just following an example of what I'm trying to pursue. So I don't think that this is a self-centered, a self-promoting thing that Paul is saying. He's ultimately saying, in my pursuit, I'm pursuing Jesus, and so if you're following me, we're going in the right direction. I love this picture of the church. Whenever people start lining themselves with a body of believers in which that we are passionately, earnestly following Jesus, is that what we can do is that I want to sign up. I want to sign up in membership. I want to sign up with my attendance, and I want to sign up with my affection and my investment, because I believe the way to which these people are going or attempting to go, that if I align myself up with them, it's as closest to the heartbeat that I can get. That's why I've said, my heart would ever break if I left this community, because I believe that we are slowly but surely being redefined of what the body of local believers, and I believe that we are going this way, because here's the thing, is that I believe that there's people in this room in which they can do the same thing to me, and they've signed up for this. Whenever you signed up to be a member, this is what you signed up to be, is that you said, I want to be accountable to following Jesus. And if you see any way in which that my direction has turned, would you be the first person on the first line? Would you be the first responder in my life? Would you say, listen, if you keep on going that way, your life is going to... That's not what you signed up to do. Let's go back this way. Let's go this direction. So I think here's another prophetic word, and last but not least, is that there's some old people, older than me. So I'm old, I'll admit it. But you guys have, we'll just say that you have more experience and age than what I have. We won't call them old. You've got more experience and age than what I do. And this is what you're called to do. You're called to come along as you begin to make adjustments, as you begin to follow Jesus. You're also calling people like me and people younger than me. You're also saying, hey, we're going this way. You might be over there, we're going this way. And encouraging people to follow the example. Some of us have a critical eye whenever it comes to generations my age and below me. I've heard generations older than me saying, you think that you guys have it tough? We had it tough. Let me just tell you something. The generation my age and below me have it tough. Do you want to know what they're facing? And this might be of our own doing. And I think it's becoming more and more apparent now that we're kind of diving into it. But this thing called social media, when we talk about how many people follow you, that it's important to us. It's important to us that we're seen and that we're heard, and we've got this platform. And you want to know what we do is that sometimes we take pictures of our food before we eat it. And we want to see who approves of this. Who likes what I'm doing? Who's following what I'm doing? And we are so indulged in getting people to like us and follow us and the things in which we do. And so we think that this is fulfilling. You want to know why it's tougher for us? Because more and more, this generation, my generation and below, it's becoming tougher and tougher to follow Jesus. Because we do not know what authenticity is anymore. We don't know what real relationships look like anymore. If Jesus was on Facebook, I would friend him and I would follow him, and that's what following Jesus looks like. He's my friend. I'm following him on Facebook. You want me to message him? We don't know what that authenticity looks like anymore. And whenever we talk about what it really truly means to follow Jesus, I can tell you what, whenever we come to this table right here, there is no greater picture of a sacrifice that it was made for you and I, and a practice in which that we would say, you can come to the table, you can come and dine, for even whenever we don't know what this relationship with Jesus looks like, I can tell you that it looks like brokenness and it looks like shed blood. Even though that you and I might not be able to understand what this following looks like, I can tell you what, he's given us graces in which that we can recognize what following Jesus does. Whenever we break bread together, we're ultimately saying, I'm willing to follow this example. Maybe this is the posture in which that we take today. The posture is simply, I see broken body and I see spilt blood. The posture is, I'm willing to receive whatever Jesus has for me. And maybe that might look like that I need to make adjustments in order to follow him. So would you today, as we ask our ushers to come forward, what you're going to do is that simply there's going to be 3 different stations. There's the capability of you to find a intinction cup in 3 different places. But if you would come to the table to receive your bread today, and then you'll go to one of these 3 gentlemen. And maybe you need to make that decision today. Maybe you need to say, I have decided to follow Jesus. And maybe you might need to spend some time before that you go to the cup today. Maybe that you take the bread and you really recognize in which place, God, are you speaking? Which places in which that you want me to go? Where do you want me to serve? Does it mean losing my life for it? And it might be that. I want to lose my life for the case of Christ. So would you come today? We're going to leave this up here. If you guys would just kind of spread out over here, they're going to come to you.